Hello and welcome, dear listeners. The White House was never truly silent. Even at midnight, when Washington, D.C. slept under a blanket of humid summer air, the halls still hummed faintly with the echoes of history. Guards paced their routes, cameras blinked, radios crackled. Somewhere inside, the president slept, dreaming behind layers of security thicker than any fortress in the world. And then it happened. 3 knocks. They weren't loud, more like a hollow thud against the great iron gates of Pennsylvania Avenue. But every guard on duty heard them. At first, no one reacted. The perimeter sensors hadn't triggered. The thermal scanners showed nothing, and there were no vehicles on the road outside. The street was empty. "Did you hear that?" One guard muttered through his earpiece. "Copy that." Another answered. Sounded like knocking. The silence stretched, and then, again, 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone standing just out of sight, daring the most secure place on earth to open its doors. One of the guards switched his rifle safety off. Infrared sweep now. The cameras zoomed, scanning the gates. Nothing, no heat signatures, no shadows, no figures. Yet the sound echoed clear as day, rattling against steel that was supposed to be impenetrable. The head of security was roused from his office. Within minutes, Secret Service agents surrounded the North Lawn, weapons drawn. They expected a prankster, maybe some lunatic who had slipped through the city undetected. But when they opened the gate, there was no one there, no one. The road outside stretched empty in both directions. Then came the voice, not spoken, not broadcast through speakers. It appeared in the minds of every guard at once. A whisper threaded with ice. "We've come to speak. We've knocked. Now open." Several agents staggered back, clutching their ears. Others swore under their breath, scanning the darkness with shaking hands. But there was still no one there. No intruder. No body. Just that impossible voice lingering like smoke. The commander ordered a lockdown. The White House sealed. Alarms flared inside the residence, waking staff and jolting the president upright in his private quarters. "Monsieur, President," the chief of staff said breathlessly over the phone. "Where we have a situation, they're here." "Who?" the president demanded. The line crackled. "Strangers, sir." They knocked. Within 10 minutes, the Situation Room buzzed with activity. Generals, advisors, intelligence officers, all pouring in half-dressed, eyes wide with fear. A live feed displayed the gates outside the White House. The street remained empty. But then, at exactly 12:33 am, 3 figures appeared. No one saw them arrive. One frame of footage showed nothing. The next frame showed them standing there, in the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue, as if they had always been. They weren't masked intruders. They weren't even soldiers. They looked human, almost too human. Faces symmetrical, eyes bright and unblinking, movements unnervingly still. They wore no insignia, no uniforms, only simple gray attire that clung to their forms like shadows. And they waited. One of them raised a hand, perfectly slow, perfectly precise, and knocked on the gate once more. The sound boomed like thunder. Inside the Situation Room, the president watched with cold dread. How the hell did they get past every sensor? No one answered. The figures didn't move closer. They simply stood, hands folded, gazes fixed directly at the cameras, as though they knew the world's most powerful man was staring back. Then the voice came again, this time filling the entire Situation Room. "We are the strangers, and we have come to speak of Earth's future." Chairs scraped back. Advisors muttered. Generals cursed. But the president leaned forward, his face pale, his voice barely above a whisper. "Future," he repeated. The strangers smiled, and every screen in the room flickered to black. The Situation Room plunged into chaos. Screens flickered, radios sputtered, and even the emergency landlines dropped dead. For the first time in decades, the White House, the heart of American power, was blind. "Switch to backup feeds," barked General Harlow. Technicians scrambled at their consoles, but every system displayed the same empty black screen. Only one monitor came back to life. It wasn't security footage. It wasn't Pentagon satellite feeds. It was the White House's own internal display. Hijacked, showing a live image of the strangers outside the gate. They hadn't moved. 3 figures. Motionless, patient, almost waiting. The president stood. "Patch me through." "Sir?" "We don't," I said. "Patch me through." There was no microphone, no connection. But when the president spoke, the strangers raised their heads as if listening. Their eyes locked directly onto his through the screen. "This is the President of the United States," he said firmly, fighting the tremor in his voice. "Identify yourselves." The answer was immediate, not spoken aloud, but pressed into every skull in the room like a cold fingerprint. We are what you called once before. We knocked then. You did not answer. This time, you will. A shiver spread across the advisors. Someone muttered, once before. What the hell does that mean? The president ignored it. What do you want? The middle stranger tilted their head. Their features were flawless but uncanny, like a face sculpted to be human without ever feeling alive. We want only to speak, to warn. Your world is near its edge. But choice must be yours. Silence thickened. Every official in the room looked at the president, waiting for him to push back, to reject, to threaten military action. Instead, he stared at the strangers, trying to read something, anything, in those impossible faces. Finally, he said, if you want to speak, you'll do it on our terms. Inside, under protection. The stranger's lips curved into what could only be called a smile. As you wish. The next second, alarms blared again. Not from outside, but inside. Breach! North entrance. Someone shouted. Secret Service agents swarmed the hallways, weapons raised, shouting orders. But it was too late. When the president and his team burst from the Situation Room, the strangers were already inside the White House. No broken doors, no shattered glass, no trip alarms. They simply stood in the middle of the grand entrance hall, the presidential seal glimmering above them. The agents circled, guns drawn, red laser sights dotting the strangers' chests. The intruders didn't flinch, didn't blink. One agent barked. On the ground, hands behind your head. The stranger in the center only glanced at him, eyes calm and almost pitying. The agent's rifle clicked. Dead, battery drained, as though years of power had evaporated in a second. He tried his sidearm. Nothing. One by one, every weapon in the room failed. The president's heart pounded. He wasn't a man easily rattled, but standing in his own house, surrounded by beings that had bent reality just to appear, he felt smaller than he ever had before. The lead stranger stepped forward. Their footsteps didn't echo. Their voice slid directly into the air, vibrating through bone. We come without harm. But you are running out of time. We offer choice. Listen and survive. Refuse and end. The president swallowed hard. And if I refuse right now? The stranger's gaze hardened, and for the first time their voice carried something colder, sharper. Then the world will wake tomorrow to silence. The room froze. Secret Service, generals, advisors, all looked to the president waiting. The weight of history pressed down on his shoulders. Finally, he nodded once. Then talk. The stranger smiled again. We will begin with the truth you buried in 1947. The air in the hall grew heavier, as though the White House itself leaned in to listen. And for the first time, the president understood this was not a visit. It was a reckoning. The word 1947 dropped like a stone in the room. Everyone knew what it meant. Roswell, the supposed crash, the endless denials, the classified files buried so deep that even presidents whispered about them behind closed doors. The president's jaw tightened. He didn't like being cornered, especially not by entities that bypassed every defense his country had. You think you can stand here in the White House and lecture me about fairy tales? He said, his voice sharp. Roswell was a weather balloon, a myth. The stranger's eyes flickered, almost amused. You not lie to us. You lie only to yourselves. We were there. We remember the first knock. The room shifted with unease. Advisors exchanged glances, pale under the fluorescent lights. The president turned to his chief of staff. Get me Langley. Now. But the CIA director was already in the room, his face grim. He hadn't moved since the word was spoken. Sir, he said carefully, there are classified files. Records sealed under executive order. Only 5 people in this country have ever seen them. You're one of them. The president's blood ran cold. He remembered. The briefing he'd received his first week in office. A thick red folder, older than he was, marked EYSONLY. The photographs inside wreckage that wasn't metal, symbols that weren't human, and the bodies, small, gray, with eyes too large for their heads. He had pushed it aside, filing it away with the endless crisis of his administration. He'd told himself it was Cold War paranoia, a relic of another time. Now, standing before the strangers, he realized he had been wrong. Dead wrong. The stranger stepped closer, ignoring the circle of agents. We gave you warning then, a chance. But your kind was too young, too frightened. You buried truth beneath earth and ice, built lies upon lies, and called it protection. Now the time is thin. You must decide again. The president's voice was steady, but his hands trembled at his sides. Decide what? The stranger didn't answer. Instead, the lights in the room flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed the White House. Gasps echoed, footsteps shifted, hands reached for useless weapons. In the void, the stranger's voice rang like thunder. "Come below." The floor vibrated. At first, the president thought it was an earthquake, but then, with a grinding roar, a section of marble beneath the rug shifted, revealing a staircase spiraling down into blackness. The Secret Service agents froze. None of them had ever seen this. Neither had the president. "What in God's name?" whispered the chief of staff. The stranger gestured. "Your predecessors built walls around the truth, but even walls crumble. You buried what you feared beneath your own house. Now see what you refuse to face." The president hesitated. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to call in the military, to lock these beings in 1,000 chains. But curiosity gnawed at him. If they knew about 1947, if they had been here before, what else did they know? "Light it up," he ordered. Agents descended first, flashlights cutting into the darkness. The staircase twisted deeper than anyone expected, far below the foundations. The air grew colder, mustier, as though it hadn't been touched in decades. At the bottom, they reached a heavy steel door, rusted but intact. The stranger touched it with one finger. The locks melted like wax. The door swung open. Inside was a chamber, lit by a single dead bulb. And in the center, covered by a dusty tarp, was something none of them were prepared to see. One agent yanked the cover away. It was a craft. Small, sleek, its surface seamless, reflecting light in ways metal shouldn't. Strange markings spiraled across its hull, glowing faintly at the stranger's presence. The president's breath caught. He had seen photos of wreckage, but never this, never intact. The stranger placed a hand on the craft, almost reverently. "The first gift. Broken but enough. You buried it, fearing what it meant. You tried to copy it, but your hands were clumsy, your minds unready. Now the edge has come, and you must decide again." The president's voice shook. "Decide what? Speak plainly." The stranger's eyes glowed faintly. "Whether your species will rise or vanish." The chamber fell silent. The agents stared at the craft, at the beings, at their president. Waiting for an answer no one was ready to give. The chamber was heavy with silence. Dust clung to the air, illuminated by trembling flashlights. The alien craft gleamed faintly, pulsing with a rhythm that almost felt alive. The president stared at it, his pulse racing. For years he had brushed aside the whispers, the classified rumors. And now here it was, proof, undeniable, shimmering beneath the foundations of his own house. The stranger finally broke the silence. "You have buried the truth long enough. Tonight you must choose. Listen, and we will prepare you for what comes. Refuse, and Earth will meet the same fate as ours." The words hung in the air like a guillotine. The CIA director stepped forward, voice tight. "Fate, what exactly happened to your world?" For the first time, the stranger's expression darkened. "We lived. We thrived. We built towers higher than your clouds, minds sharper than your machines. And then the war, not of guns or fire, but of time itself. The war tore our stars from the sky. We were undone. Only fragments of us remained." The president's skin prickled. "And now you're here. Why warn us?" The stranger's gaze burned into him. "Because the war is not finished. Its tide turns toward your world. You are young, but you are the last. What consumes stars will come for you next. Unless you are ready." Gasps echoed through the chamber. An advisor whispered, "Jesus Christ." General Harlow slammed a fist against the wall. "This is manipulation. Classic psyop. They want us scared, compliant. Sir, we need to contain them." But his words cut off as his flashlight fizzled out. Sparks spat from the bulb. The same happened to every piece of tech in the room, radios, weapons, even wristwatches. The alien craft thrummed louder, responding to the stranger's presence. The lead stranger spread their hands. "We do not come to trick. We come to offer. One choice, with no second chance. Accept our guidance, and we will teach you to endure. Reject it, and your world's silence will echo into eternity." The president's mouth was dry. He forced his voice steady. "Guidance in exchange for what? There's always a price." The stranger's smile returned, thin and unreadable. "The price is trust. Nothing more, nothing less. Trust." The president almost laughed. "You break into my home, disable my defenses, hijack my systems, and now you ask me to trust you." The stranger tilted their head. "Would you have listened if we knocked at your door politely?" "No, you would have hidden, lied, stalled. Your kind listens only when forced to face the dark." The chamber filled with mutters, fear, anger, doubt. Advisors argued in hushed tones. Some urged caution. Others demanded the president refuse. The president raised a hand. Quiet. His eyes never left the stranger. "If I agree, if I take this offer, what exactly changes?" The strangers stepped closer. The glow from the alien craft spilled across their face. We will show you what you cannot yet see. Your science scratches only the surface. Your weapons are toys against what comes. With our knowledge, you will endure. But if you refuse, the stranger's gaze shifted upward, as though looking through stone and soil, through the roof of the White House, through the sky itself. If you refuse, your sun will set on a world that will not wake. The words froze everyone in place. The president's heart thundered. He thought of his children, his country, the billions who slept in ignorance of what was unfolding beneath their feet. Was this real, or the greatest bluff in history? He exhaled slowly. I don't make choices under threats. Not without proof. The stranger nodded once. Then proof you shall have. By dawn the world will see. The alien craft pulsed brighter, flooding the chamber with pale blue light. The agents shielded their eyes. The president felt his skin prickle with static. When the light dimmed, the strangers were gone. But the craft still hummed, alive again after decades of silence. And somewhere above, alarms wailed across Washington. Something had changed. Something the whole world would soon see. The Situation Room buzzed with chaos. Screens flickered, communication lines failed, and the hum of the alien craft below still seeped into the building like a low heartbeat. The president, pale but composed, stood at the head of the table. Shell the building. Nobody in or out, he ordered. Secret Service agents nodded and rushed off. Advisors whispered furiously, some demanding retaliation, others begging for diplomacy. But none could shake the stranger's final words. By dawn, the world will see. The CIA director leaned in, lowering his voice. Sir, there's something you need to know. This isn't the first time they've come. The president's head snapped around. What? The director's jaw tightened. We have files classified beyond clearance levels. Incidents in 1947, 1962, 1983. Every few decades they make contact. Each time leadership chose silence. Cover-ups. Disinformation, erased witnesses. They've been here before, always leaving the same warning. The president's pulse spiked. And no one thought to tell me. The director's eyes flickered. Need to know, sir. Until now, a thick file was placed on the table. Yellowed pages, faded photographs, and redacted paragraphs stared back. The president opened it with trembling fingers. The first image hit like a punch, grainy black and white, showing men in suits standing beside a blurred, tall figure. Beneath it, Washington, 1947. Another photo showed military men clustered around a glowing object half buried in desert sand, captioned Nevada, 1962. And then one more, an emergency meeting eerily similar to the one unfolding now, stamped 1983. Each file contained a phrase handwritten in the margins. The choice must be made. The president's throat went dry. They've been circling us like vultures for nearly a century. No, the CIA director corrected. Like guardians or executioners, depending on your view. General Harlow slammed his fist on the table. And every president, before you made the right call, ignore them. They want control, nothing more. Sir, don't be fooled. The Secretary of State spoke sharply. Ignore them. Look around, General. Every camera feed in the city just died. Satellites are blind. This is no parlor trick. If they wanted us gone, they'd have done it already. The president rubbed his temples, mind spiraling. What happens if they're telling the truth? What if this war is real? The room went silent. No one had an answer. A trembling advisor whispered, Sir, the files mention something else. Something darker. The president glanced up. Show me. The advisor flipped through brittle papers until finding a final, sealed envelope. On the cover, in bold ink, OLIFA offer NRS. The president broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet. Typed words filled the page, stark and chilling. In 1983, the strangers demanded acceptance of their guidance. The president refused. Within 24 hours, the Challenger satellite array malfunctioned. Entire communication networks collapsed. Nuclear sensors reported phantom launches. Panic nearly triggered World War III. Then silence. They left, until now. The president stared at the page, his stomach twisting. My God. He looked up, voice low. They've been testing us, measuring how far they can push before we destroy ourselves. The CIA director nodded grimly. And maybe this time, they've decided patience has run out. Alarms blared overhead. Screens in the Situation Room flickered back online, only they weren't showing normal feeds. Every channel displayed the same image, a blue glow stretching across Earth's horizon. The stranger's voice echoed, not just in the room, but across every broadcast, every device, every speaker in America. By dawn, all will see. By dawn, the veil falls. The president's blood ran cold. They weren't bluffing. The chamber fell into silence. Advisors looked to him, desperate for direction. The weight of centuries of secrecy pressed down on his shoulders. For the first time in his life, the president felt like a man standing at the edge of an abyss, forced to decide whether to jump or be pushed. The Situation Room was frozen in stunned silence. Every device in the building glowed with the same blue horizon, shimmering like a living flame. Advisors muttered prayers, generals gritted their teeth, and the president gripped the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles went white. "This isn't just us," the Secretary of State whispered, her voice trembling. "That's a global feed. They've hijacked every screen on Earth. From Beijing to Berlin, from the towers of New York to the villages of Africa, billions stared upward or huddled around glowing screens, all watching the same image. The world was united not by choice, but by terror. Then, the stranger's voice returned, low, resonant, undeniable. "For centuries you were told you were alone. For centuries your leaders hid the truth. Tonight, we strip away the veil. Tonight, you will see." The blue glow rippled. The horizon widened until the image shifted into a vast starfield, alien constellations glittering brighter than any Earth sky. Slowly, the stars bent, warped, and then a battlefield came into view. Colossal ships drifted in silence, wreckage stretching as far as the eye could see. Craters pockmarked lifeless planets. Hulks of destroyed machines floated like corpses in the void. It wasn't fiction, it wasn't special effects. It was real, too raw, too brutal to fake. Gasps filled the Situation Room as alien bodies, twisted and skeletal, appeared on the feed. Some were humanoid, others grotesque, all lifeless. The war was undeniable. The stranger's voice cut through again. "This was our world. This was our war. We fought until none remained. Entire species burned, entire civilizations ended. We came to warn you, because your fate is tied to ours. The enemy that devoured us has found you." The president's heart hammered. "Enemy," he muttered aloud. The feed zoomed deeper into the battlefield. There, among drifting debris, was movement. Black, insect-like constructs crawled over wrecked ships, consuming metal, stripping flesh from corpses, rebuilding themselves from the dead. Their eyes burned red, unfeeling. The Secretary of Defense recoiled. "Jesus Christ, they're alive." "No." The CIA director corrected, his face pale. "They're feeding." The stranger's voice grew sharper, echoing across the planet. "They are not invaders. They are erasers. They consume until nothing remains. They do not conquer. They erase." Billions of people across Earth watched in horror as the image showed an entire planet reduced to ash in seconds. Its crust ripped apart, its oceans boiled away. Then the feed cut. The screens went black. The Situation Room's silence was deafening. The president broke it first. "Why show us this now?" As if answering, the ground beneath Washington shuddered. The lights flickered. Then, from the White House lawn, the stranger's voice returned, this time not through screens, but vibrating the very air. "Because they are already here." The president's blood turned to ice. "What?" Agents scrambled to monitors, pulling up radar and thermal imaging. At first, nothing appeared. Then blips. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Above Earth's orbit, cloaked shapes were beginning to stir. "They've been hiding," whispered the Secretary of State. "In orbit. Right above us." Panic spread like wildfire across the globe. News anchors shouted over one another. People screamed in the streets. Churches filled instantly. Everywhere, fear became contagious. But inside the Situation Room, the president stood rooted, his mind spinning. "We're on the edge of something bigger than war," he said finally, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "This is survival." The CI director leaned forward. "Sir, there's one last file. Something never tested. A contingency plan in case they came back." The president's eyes narrowed. "What plan?" The director slid a folder across the table. Stamped across the top in bold black ink, "Paro GTA Euroric," the president's breath caught. Inside were designs, not for defense, but for contact. A massive global array buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, capable of sending a message into the void, bypassing all human communication channels. The note beneath was simple: if they return, send the signal. The choice is theirs. Obey or resist. The president closed the file slowly. The room waited, hanging on his every move. Finally, he whispered, "But dawn, the world will demand an answer. And we have none." The clock ticked toward sunrise. Humanity stood on the edge of revelation and possibly extinction. The file trembled in the president's hands. The Situation Room was a tomb. Every advisor, every general, every analyst leaning forward, waiting to breathe again. Only the faint hum of electronics filled the silence. "Project Aurora," he said at last, his voice low, careful, like the words themselves might break the room. "Buried. Hidden even from me," the CIA director nodded. "Only 3 presidents knew, and all of them swore never to use it unless the impossible became inevitable." The president looked up sharply. "And you think this is inevitable?" A general slammed his fist on the table. "Sir, with all due respect, we can't negotiate with this thing. Did you see what they showed us? Did you see what those machines did? If they're in orbit, we don't have months or weeks. We have hours." The stranger's last words echoed through the president's mind. "Because they are already here." The Secretary of State leaned forward, her tone urgent but softer. "Aurora wasn't built as a weapon. It was built as a call. If we send that signal, it won't go to those machines. It will go to their enemy." The president froze. "Their enemy." The director tapped the file. "Yes, the strangers, or others like them. Survivors, resistance, whatever they were. Aurora is a beacon, strong enough to cut through their technology. If they're out there, it will find them." The president exhaled, tension tightening his chest. "And if they're not?" The director's silence was answer enough. Hours later, in the cold pre-dawn light, a convoy rolled west from Washington, escorted by black helicopters that cut across the sky like shadows. The president rode in silence, the Aurora file open on his lap. Pages of diagrams described an impossible machine, a chamber carved into a mountain, cables thicker than tree trunks, a core of something labeled resonant crystal. He read the final note over and over. "This device will not simply send a signal. It will open a door." The convoy reached Colorado by sunrise. The president and his closest advisors were escorted down into the earth through concrete tunnels lined with blast doors. The deeper they went, the colder it grew. Finally, they entered a cavern so vast it swallowed sound. At its center stood the machine, Aurora. It looked less like human technology and more like something pulled straight from the visions of the stranger itself. A circular ring of black metal, suspended in midair, humming faintly. Thick cables snaked from it into the rock, pulsing faint blue light like veins feeding a heart. This was built decades ago," the president whispered. The CIA director nodded grimly. "Reverse engineered. Pieces we recovered. Pieces never meant for us." The president stepped closer. The air near Aurora buzzed, prickling his skin. He could feel it, not just a machine, but a presence. "Sir," the general urged, "you can't seriously consider this. If we send that signal, we're inviting them here. Whoever built this. We don't know if they're allies. Or worse." The Secretary of State countered sharply. "And if we do nothing, we wait for those things in orbit to come down and tear us apart. At least Aurora gives us a chance." The president closed his eyes. The weight of humanity pressed down on him. He thought of the billions watching, praying, fearing, demanding answers. He thought of his daughter in college, his wife asleep when the stranger's voice cut through the world. He thought of the empty battlefield shown to them, of entire civilizations erased. He opened his eyes. "Prepare it." The chamber roared to life. Engineers worked furiously unlocking panels, entering codes long left untouched. The ring began to spin, slow at first, then faster, faster, until the air itself vibrated. Sparks of blue light arced between the cables. A technician shouted over the noise. "Core is charging, resonance at 60%. The president stepped back, shielding his eyes. The ring glowed now, brighter, pulsing with energy that shook the cavern. 80%. The general barked, "Sir, last chance to abort." The president's jaw tightened. "We've gone too far." The chamber shook violently. The ring flared white hot. Then silence. For a moment there was nothing. No sound, no light. Just the cavern humming faintly. Then the air in the center of the ring rippled like water disturbed by an unseen hand. A shape began to form. Not human, not stranger. Something else. The technician's voice cracked. "Signal sent, but something's coming back." The president stared into the forming gateway, his heart thundering. Aurora hadn't just sent a call. It had opened a door, and something on the other side had answered. The cavern trembled as the Aurora gateway stabilized. The ring glowed with a brilliance that was almost blinding, arcs of white, blue energy crawling across the chamber walls. The air was no longer still. It rippled, distorted, alive. Power surge holding steady. The technician reported, though his voice shook. "Resonance. It's locked in, sir. The door is open." The president felt the words like ice down his spine. A door wasn't supposed to open. This was supposed to be a signal, a message tossed into the void. Yet here it was, a portal. The Secretary of State whispered, "God help us." The rippling center of the ring deepened into darkness, a well of endless night. Then, movement. A silhouette leaned forward, hazy, as if still deciding whether to cross. The cavern's temperature dropped instantly. Breath became frost in the air. The general pulled his sidearm. "Sir, permission to shut it down. Whatever this is, it's not on our side." The president raised a trembling hand. "Hold." The silhouette sharpened. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that bent in ways that defied human logic. Its head was crowned with faint light, like embers of dying stars. When it spoke, it wasn't with a mouth, but with vibrations that rattled the bones of everyone present. "Aurora, you dared awaken it." The chamber shook. Lights flickered. The technicians screamed as their consoles sparked, unable to contain the resonance. The president stood firm. "We sent the call because we were told you fought the machines. We were told you knew how to stop them." The being tilted its head as if studying him. "The strangers showed you a fraction of truth. They did not tell you all." The Secretary of State stepped forward, her voice breaking. "Then tell us. What are those things in orbit? What are they waiting for?" The being's form shimmered, revealing glimpses of alien landscapes, cities in flames, galaxies swallowed by dark clouds. "They are not invaders. They are the end. And they are patient." The general barked. "Then help us stop them." For a moment, silence. The being's faint ember light pulsed brighter. "To stop them, you must destroy what they seek. Your world." The chamber erupted in shouts. The Secretary of Defense slammed the table. "Absolutely not." The president's face drained of color. "You're saying Earth itself is the target." The being's voice cut like steel. "They do not want your people. They want your planet. They will strip its oceans, its crust, its heart. They will leave only void. Unless Earth is gone first, they will come." The president felt his knees weaken. Billions of lives, and the solution was suicide. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "There has to be another way." The being shifted closer to the ring, its ember light eyes narrowing. "You misunderstand. We are not saviors. We are survivors. We burned our own worlds before the machines could. We chose ashes over nothing." The words hit like hammer blows. Aurora hadn't called for help. It had called to executioners. "Sir," a technician shouted suddenly, pulling the president back. New readings, massive movement in orbit. The machines, they've uncloaked. The monitors flickered to life, showing the skies above Earth. Dozens, maybe hundreds of black insect-like ships had revealed themselves, descending slowly, blotting out the stars. Panic swept through the chamber. The general shouted, "This is it. They're coming down." The being at the gate turned, its ember crown flaring. "They know Aurora is open. They are coming not for your world, but for this place. They will not let you call again." The chamber shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling outside. The ground itself seemed to rumble as though answering. The president's mind raced. Billions of lives depended on his next words. The being demanded destruction. The machines demanded silence. Aurora pulsed brighter, the gateway unstable, threatening to collapse or explode. The president looked into the being's burning eyes and whispered, "If survival means extinction, then maybe it's not survival at all." The being tilted its head again, unrateable. "Then you have chosen defiance." The ring flared violently, the cavern filling with a roar that split eardrums. And just as quickly as it began, the connection faltered. The gateway flickered, destabilized by the pressure of approaching machine signals. "Sir," the technician screamed, "we can either shut it down now, or let it overload." The president hesitated only a second, then barked, "Do it. Shut it down." The ring powered down in a deafening collapse, blue light fading into darkness. But even as the last flicker died, the truth settled like a stone in the president's chest. The machines knew where they were, and they were coming. The cavern still vibrated with the echoes of Aurora shutting down. Smoke drifted from consoles, the acrid scent of burning wires mixing with the dust shaken loose from the ceiling. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Then the monitors lit up again. The orbit feed came alive with terrifying clarity. Hundreds of black shapes filled the skies, blotting out the stars. The machines were descending. The general slammed his fist on the table. "They've marked us. We can't hide anymore." The Secretary of State whispered, "They're not just coming for Washington. They're coming for the world." The president stared at the screens, his reflection caught in the glass. He looked older, weaker, his face carved with the weight of impossible choices. And yet, he felt something stir in his chest. Not resignation, not fear. Defiance. "They'll knock," he said quietly. Everyone turned to him. "They knocked once already," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "Through the strangers, through Aurora. Now they'll knock again. But this time, it won't be at our door. It'll be at all of Earth's." The chamber shook violently as though the machines had heard him. Sirens wailed. Outside, the early morning sky grew darker, a false dawn smothered by descending shadows. The first strike Washington erupted in chaos. Civilians screamed in the streets as black crafts appeared overhead, their hulls smooth, their movements silent but precise. Across the world, the same story unfolded. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, machines blotting out the sky. But they didn't fire. Not yet. Instead, they hovered. Watching, waiting. It was the same rhythm the strangers had shown. The same patience before the erasure began. The president stood in the cavern, staring up at the monitors. "They're toying with us. Testing us." The general barked. "Then let's give them an answer." He turned to the president, fire in his eyes. "Sir, with your order, every missile silo, every submarine, every fighter in the air. We launch everything we've got. We don't wait for their strike. We take the fight to them." The Secretary of State cut in, desperate. "And what if it only makes them retaliate harder? You saw what they're capable of. We throw everything at them, and Earth burns faster." The room fractured into shouting. Generals calling for war. Diplomats begging for restraint. Advisors reminding them of billions of lives hanging in the balance. The president raised his hand. Silence fell. The knock on every screen in the cavern, the lead machine ship shifted. Its hull rippled like liquid metal. Then sound. A deep, resonant knock that seemed to echo from the very sky. Not thunder, not explosions. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate. Boom. Boom. It reverberated across the world. Windows shattered. Oceans rippled. Birds fled into chaotic flocks. It wasn't a sound meant to be heard. It was meant to be felt. The stranger's first warning came back to him. "We knock first." The president closed his eyes. He understood now. The machines weren't asking. They were announcing. The final knock before erasure. The last choice. He opened his eyes. His staff looked to him with desperation, waiting for the last order they would ever follow. He thought of his daughter. He thought of the billions of faces glued to the skies, waiting for their leaders to save them. He thought of the choice the survivors had made, to burn their own worlds to ashes before the machines could feed. But he was not ready to surrender Earth to nothingness. The president's voice was steady when he finally spoke. "Order every launch system online, but hold fire until my command. Let them know Earth is not silent. Let them know we will not vanish quietly." The general snapped a salute, already barking into his radio. The chamber lit up with maps, trajectories, codes being unlocked. Across the world, missile silos cracked open, submarines primed their warheads, stealth bombers readied payloads. Billions of humans waited, trembling under skies filled with shadows. The machines hovered, silent, watching. The knock still echoed in the bones of humanity. The president leaned closer to the mic, his words transmitted to every base, every commander, every soldier still standing. "This is not the end of us. If they erase us, we'll carve our mark into them first. If they want silence, we'll answer with fire." Tonight, the world speaks as one. The dawn, the first ray of dawn broke through the eastern sky, painting the horizon red. It touched the White House, the Pentagon, the mountains hiding Aurora, the oceans, the cities, all trembling under the alien shadow. The president stood tall in the cavern, eyes locked on the descending shapes. His finger hovered over the launch command. The world held its breath, and as the machines drew closer, the question burned across every soul on Earth. Would humanity's last sound be the silence of erasure, or the roar of defiance? The screen cut to black.